Chapter 25, Camp Foo. Ashley had been assigned her own room. She was the only girl in a camp of over 20 boys. She figured Jeff had to share, but as far as she was concerned, he was still the lucky one. As soon as their bags were stowed, the children assigned to the martial arts camp were lined up outside the main practice hall. Ashley stood in the back, so not to stand out any more than necessary. 3 instructors stood at the front of the room. The tallest prowled back and forth, not speaking, just taking stock of the assigned group. Ashley guessed he was doing his 2 years of public service, as well as the 2 assistants who stood beside him. I am Citizen Shu. You may call me Sihing Shu. Sihing means senior student. This is Sihing Cleary and Sihing Lopez. We are here to help guide you through the challenges of the next few weeks. This is a mixed martial arts course. You will be taught many things and you will be tested. But first, I'd like to know, do any of you have any experience with the martial arts? About half the students raised their hands. Ashley didn't lift hers. Despite 2 previous summers of similar courses, she did not count herself as experienced. Now, how many of you have been hit hard, in the face? Sihing Shu asked. At first several hands went up, but some were timid, uncertain. I mean hard, bloody nose, fat lip, black eye. Only a few hands remained aloft. Shu pointed to one boy and asked, Who hit you? My brother hits me all the time, he said, pointing at his brother, standing a few spaces away. Shu and several others laughed. Ashley noticed that the boy, however, was not laughing. And you? Shu gestured to another boy. My father, came the answer. Shu pointed again. A kid in my class. Has anyone here ever been hit while in the ring? Shu asked. All the hands went down. When you are in a fight, if you are ever in a fight, you must fight for your life. It will be at that moment when you are weak, tired, probably very hurt. That is when you must act to save your life. We will help you get to that place and teach you how to think when you're there. Shu walked along the front of the room. Someone may come, an outlaw, the government, a king. They may take all of your possessions. They may steal your clothes, eat your food, and burn down your house. But you can survive all of that. You may have nothing, but you will never be defenseless. Knowledge is the greatest power. It is something no one can see. It cannot be stolen or broken. No one can take it from you. When you leave here, you will be in possession of a new knowledge. You will know things about yourself you did not know when you arrived. You will have earned it, paid for it in sweat and blood, and it will be worth much more than money. This knowledge comes in the form of 2 most valuable lessons. The first can only be studied in a controlled environment, since the lesson is about control. Every day at 3 o'clock, we will have tournament-style sparring matches. Everyone will participate. You can win by points, knockout, or submission. That is not the lesson. That is just the place where you will have the experience I want you to think about. You see, a lesson is not always learned in a single moment. It is something to be taken in and contemplated. Then it becomes understood. The match is not the lesson. It is just the framework. But within this framework, at some point, you will be hit in the face. This is a unique experience, I promise you. The lesson is this. How, after being struck, does one remain composed? Can you ignore the pain and stay focused on your survival? Can you remain calm and aware? I'm not here to teach you how to hit someone, but rather how to work through being hit. So lesson number 1 is, keep thinking through the pain. Now lesson 2 is much more difficult to learn. If you could master this, you would never have to learn lesson 1. Number 2 is simple. Don't get hit. Everything we teach you supports those 2 rules. Okay, now I want you to get changed into your warm-up gear. We're going to do some stretching and a little Tai Chi. This camp was different from the other martial arts programs Ashley had attended. For one thing, she liked it. Chapter 26, The Oval Office. Monday, July 6th, 2308. Dr. Fox and Secretary Croswell entered the Oval Office, greeting the assembled directors and citizens. The last time Fox had been here, under the previous administration of President Stagwell, he had given the president an amplifier. He knew that Stagwell had handed the amplifier down to President Conway as part of his oath of office. Croswell had instructed the president in its use, but Conway and Fox had never discussed it. For this meeting, the president was not in the room. Fox knew the men present, but Croswell made a round of introductions anyhow. Fox shook hands with the president's chief of staff, John Phillips, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Secretary of State, a few senators, and Director Stanwood. Fox sat in the open chair, the hot seat, as it were. The other significant difference, Fox noticed, was that now, instead of the Micronics device which he had carried for over 20 years, now Fox had the Metacron in his pocket. This device was different, but only slightly. In fact, the device seemed to have, or rather give him, a distinct approach. "What the hell, Fox?" Phillips did not sound friendly. "How are you, Mr. Phillips?" Fox asked. "Seems to be a couple issues you failed to mention to us." "Probably more than a couple," Fox answered. "How about you just explain this business about detonating beryllium?" "It's just a concept." "And 2 hours later the Epsilon facility explodes. Does that sound like a coincidence to you?" "Seems unrelated to me," Fox said. "Cut the shit. You know what we want." "I suppose I do." "So are you going to give it to us?" the chief of staff snapped. Fox smiled. "Right here, in front of everybody?" No one laughed or even smiled. Fox swallowed. "It was an idea, sir. It didn't work. Thank God. Even if you introduced the transcript of the call as evidence, even if you could extradite Dr. Tay, it was just an idea. It was never going to work." Fox looked at Stanwood. "Might be easier to convict me if I were pursuing this. That would really be treasonous." "There would never be a trial," Phillips said. "Look, I tried with the interface. You saw what happened." "Try harder." "How about you get me some real volunteers, not death row inmates?" "You don't sound very cooperative, Doctor." "Do you realize what this cost? Not even in terms of actual human life, just cash money. The installments are chump change. I spent more than that out of my own pocket." "We're not asking." Fox looked him in the eyes. "Has it occurred to you that if God wanted you to know what I know, he'd have made you smarter?" "He didn't make you president, and I don't think you believe in God." Fox remained silent, his lips in a tight, thin line. "I'm going to give you a week to think this over, Dr. Fox. You start again in a week, or you say good night. Do you understand?" Phillips asked. Fox laughed. "Let me get this straight. You suspect I have the ability to detonate beryllium, and your response is to threaten me? I contributed more in 8th grade than all of you have put together. You want to lecture me? You dare? I created the cyber tanks that ended the war. Hell, you still use the 3 a.m. guards. I don't owe you anything. I'm the last person you should want to threaten, let alone try and kill. By your logic, if I had this power and you exposed yourself as such ignorant bullies, I would be obligated, as a patriot, to kill all of you." No one spoke. "If you have evidence against me, produce it. If you think I'm a traitor, get a warrant. You consider me a threat to national security? I am national security. I am the first among equals. Your job is to protect me." Fox stood and looked over to Stanwood. "This is you, isn't it? You're still bitter, and so you convinced him to try and strong-arm me?" He returned his attention to Mr. Phillips. "Sir, I regret to inform you, you've been played. When I have something worthwhile, something safe, you're the first person I'll bring it to. Until then, good day to you, gentlemen." Fox walked from the room. Behind him, Phillips said, "What's he talking about, Stanwood? You two have history?" Croswell burst into laughter. Chapter 27. Denali Cafe. Von Kalt waited until he and Stanwood were in the car before making his case. "Sir, I've been informed of new developments you should know about." "What's that?" Stanwood asked, looking out the window. "Sir, this morning Mrs. Fox and the children left home on transport shuttles with luggage." "You don't say," Stanwood mused. "Let me guess. Our team's lost them in traffic." "The shuttles, yes, sir." "Well, that makes Fox about the nearest you can get to a flight risk, don't you think?" I do, sir, Von Kalt agreed. Very well, Commander, you have a green light. But until we get paperwork, this is a completely off-the-books operation. Do you understand me? I do, sir, Von Kalt smiled. One more thing, Stanwood said. I want him transferred to the old NASA facility out at White Sands. I'm giving you strict instructions and a direct order. Once you take him into custody, keep him sedated until you get there. Before you get there, have all the Trellium all metal for a 10-mile radius pulled out. That means no vehicles, no facilities, not even so much as a pen. If we're going to take this seriously, there's no sense in ignoring the number one threat. We're talking about a guy who can detonate T-256 with a thought. I'd also recommend disabling the doctor with some sort of airborne agent, maybe gas or something. Don't try taking him by force, with guns. That would be a mistake. In fact, Director, I'd be very impressed if I see you again. Von Kalt blinked lazily and turned for the door. Oh, and finally, Stanwood said, please take along a pair of gloves. No sense ending up like Pierce. Von Kalt turned to face his superior. I'm telling you, Pierce pulled a flying squirrel. I bet $1 million he's alive and well in Belize. Just because you never found an impact point doesn't make Pierce clever. His family certainly seems to believe he's missing. If not, they're going through an awful lot of fuss and losing their prominent position in the Republic. Over what, a ruse? Stanwood tapped his chin and stared at the ceiling. No, it gains them nothing. If Pierce were alive and in possession of the micronics, we would know about it, one way or the other. Stanwood glanced back at Von Kalt. And you shouldn't bet money you don't have. Von Kalt exited the office as Stanwood leafed through paperwork he'd been neglecting. Monday afternoon, July 6, 2308. Dr. Fox sat at an outdoor table at the busy cafe. The warm breeze smelled of rain, flowers, and coffee. People passing by had smiles and nods for each other. The goodwill that had started with the beautiful weather spread from one person to the next. Fox blew across the top of his cup. He didn't recognize the tall man who approached his table. Fox himself was 6 foot, but the stranger was well over that. Obviously a federal agent, he was dressed in a sharp black suit and tie. Fox saw another across the patio, and 2 more at the far entrance. The first agent stepped to the side. Fox thought he recognized Deputy Director Von Kalt, but failed to place him as Stanwood's aide. Then Von Kalt raised the gas gun. It resembled a regular pistol except for the large canister-like barrel. As Von Kalt raised the weapon, his agents raised respirators to their faces. Fox watched the dark smoke billowing from the fat little pistol. The gas reached his mind, and consciousness abandoned him. Von Kalt gestured for his men to secure the area. As he knelt next to the unconscious Dr. Fox, he noticed the gas, heavier than air, growing denser at ground level. Von Kalt tightened the straps of his respirator and searched the doctor's pockets. Wearing blue surgical gloves, Von Kalt patted the man's clothing and located the object he was looking for. He reached into Fox's breast pocket and pulled out the prototype device. Von Kalt stared at it. He knew what he was holding. The legendary interface. The single greatest item in all of mankind's history. Was he up to the challenge? Was he worthy? Crouched over Dr. Fox, his back to his subordinates, Von Kalt peeled the glove from his right hand. When the device made contact, Rudolph felt a tingling sensation, as if everything got both warm and cold. The second thing he noticed was an utter absence of sound. The city had gone quiet. He'd heard the horror stories about what could go wrong during one's initiation with the prototype. He'd heard that, in successful cases, time often seemed to stop. Conscious that his men were still behind him, and aware that anything he did right now would give him away, Von Kalt remained still. He held the device in his right hand, closed his eyes, and concentrated. He focused his mind and waited. He knew that if he were worthy, the device would initialize and display the operating system title. A moment later, the word Metacron filled his mind's eye. That was enough. He smiled, pocketed the device, and replaced his glove. Slowly, the city life returned. Von Kalt heard the sounds of traffic and pedestrians all around them. He checked Fox's pulse and pupils and stood. He's good to go. Get him out of here. Von Kalt's men moved in and secured Dr. Fox. They strapped him to a gurney and loaded him into a waiting transport. The other patrons would wake feeling a bit nauseous and bloated, but the effects would wear off in an hour or so. In 3 hours, the compound would no longer even be detectable in their systems. Chapter 28. No Women, No Kids. Monday afternoon, July 6th, 2308. Von Kalt landed his transport on the executive lot and carried Fox's personal effects to Stanwood's office. "Did he have it?" Stanwood asked, without looking up. "Nope. He had nothing. Just the usual wallet, watch, eyeglasses." "But why glasses? No one wears glasses anymore." "Fox has never been wired," Stanwood replied. "Is that a fact?" "That's what they say." Stanwood rose from the desk and went through the contents of the evidence bag. He opened the wallet and handed Von Kalt the extra key card to the Fox house. "You know, maybe Pierce engineered the whole thing. He could have been picked up by his own crew," Von Kalt suggested. "Miller and Harris both said he didn't jump," Stanwood commented. "Doesn't mean he didn't fake it. No one ever accused him of being stupid." "None of this strikes me as especially intelligent," Stanwood countered. Stanwood looked Von Kalt in the eye. "Where is it?" he asked. "Where's what?" Von Kalt didn't hesitate. Stanwood gestured to the key card. "Do a thorough search of the Fox home, with gloves on. I want you to bring me any amplifiers you might find." "Is that all?" Von Kalt asked. "No, it's not all. Political support for abstracting Fox comes with a price. I need the immediate family members brought in, alive if possible, but in regardless." "I'll take a team, but you know what we're up against here. Alive does not seem likely. We're talking about a mom and 2 kids. You've seen the files. Well, so have I. My men aren't authorized to know why we're going after them, and giving them DOA orders on women and children is not going to go over very well." The shuttles were registered to the heart of the city campground. There are several dozen summer programs running there, and some 20,000 parents and children participating. Unfortunately, their surveillance system is garbage. For now, we're scanning the campground for any records or camera pops, but I want you watching the house. Stanwood gestured to the card in Von Kalt's hand. "Once you're finished with your initial search, take that card out to Abby's Diner in Eagle Rock. Call me once you get there. I'll send our sleeper out to meet you. On the off chance we don't find Agent Zelina or her children, I want him waiting in the wings." "What about Fox's security outfit?" "The Washington security team has been temporarily pushed out of their residence. There are no agents to log your visit." "But you're serious about this, going after the wife and kids? Isn't that a little low even for you?" "It's not for me. It's the price of our partners' cooperation. Besides, without them, we have no leverage on Fox. And if you had any idea who his wife is, you would know that as long as she's out there, we're a long way from finished with this. Anastasia Zelina was an active spy when Fox met her. He convinced Croswell he'd turned her and added her to his team. She's the worst kind of loose end, and she's extremely dangerous. Not to mention his children. Ashley is the incarnation of the AI Fox created, codenamed Astral. The 3 a.m. project had to be closed when Astral went berserk and murdered 37 members of the technical staff. She's beyond dangerous. She's a walking time bomb. Tell your men to fire on sight. They don't get any extra points for bringing her in alive. In fact, if they try and take her alive, they will most likely wind up dead." "They're not going to want to gun down a 12-year-old girl," Von Kalt answered. "Gas might work, but you've been warned. Regardless, Fox has enhanced both wife and children with extremely sensitive government technology, and the Attorney General has the documentation to prove it. They're property of the Republic of the United States. There's also a very high probability that Dunkirk will fail in his mission, but Anastasia will have to reveal the extent of her powers, and when the warrants come through for us to seize the Washington security residence, we'll have it all on tape." Stanwood returned to his desk. "Now take that card out to Ultraman and tell him to keep his ears on. The minute the wife and kids return home, I want them reduced to evidence." "You're making a mistake. Dunkirk is a freak, and I don't know how you justify keeping him on the payroll. He understands orders. Like when God told Abraham to kill Isaac, he'll do things you and your men, even I, wouldn't do. If we could find his compatriots, Morgenstern and Gardner, then we'd have a real team. You wouldn't believe the jobs they pulled down in South America." "I think I might. When you see the mother or the children, you notify both Dr. Dunkirk and myself. I'm sending 8 agents with you. Your only job will be to notify me the moment something happens. So go for all of you. I already have 2 other teams in the vicinity. No excuses, no mistakes." Von Kalt turned and walked from the office. "I'll let you know if we find anything on Khalistan." In the hallway outside, he pulled the Matacron from his pocket and looked at it in his hand. Von Kalt approached the Fox home. His men waited in the car behind him. He waved the key card at the panel and the exterior door opened. Inside, he immediately felt something. It drew him directly to Ashley's room. He paused at the door, touched it, listened, and then after a few minutes entered. He walked directly to the desk. The evening sun streamed through the windows. Von Kalt stood, transfixed by the center drawer in the raised shelf above the blotter. He opened the drawer. He stared at the place where the Micronics was and pulled the Metacron from his pocket. Von Kalt stood, breathing, looking at the amplifier in his hand. After a few minutes he closed the drawer, never touching the Micronics. It was right there, lying right in front of him, but he could not take it. Von Kalt did a cursory search of the home, but soon left. He had some things to think about. Von Kalt found the seedy breakfast diner Stanwood had mentioned, Abby's, on the outskirts of the northeast edge of Angel City, and called Dunkirk. Von Kalt didn't see the allure of a 24-hour breakfast place, but Stanwood assured him that Dunkirk loved it and always ordered enough to choke an ox. For the first hour, Von Kalt resisted the sizzling flapjacks, maple syrup, and coconut-flavored coffee. But by the time Dunkirk arrived, a full 2 hours later, he'd eaten his fill and just gotten his check. "So you don't have a problem with this, taking out a woman and 2 kids?" Von Kalt asked, handing over the keycard.
"No. Should I?"
The man's eyes appeared to be on fire. He seemed to have come down with some kind of summer flu. Weighing a stout 250, Dunkirk was sweating on the cool and balmy night. He twitched and bounced with energy in the quiet, boring diner. "It's not very sporting, is it?" Von Kalt inquired.
"You know who we're talking about here? Zelina? If you haven't heard the stories, you should look her up."
"But 2 little kids?" Von Kalt pressed.
"It's not so much about the hunt for me. Sport isn't my thing."
Von Kalt watched him, wondering if he were on drugs or just utterly insane. The Metacron lay heavily in his palm, below the lip of the table.
"For me, it's about the moment. Every moment is different. They come and they pass, and what was will never be again."
"You're in it for the pain, then." Dunkirk touched his nose. Von Kalt narrowed his eyes. Dunkirk rose from the booth, pocketed the keycard, and exited the diner without another word. Von Kalt remained, bathing in the smells of fried egg, bacon, buttered toast, and fresh squeezed oranges. He laughed to himself as he laid out the cash for his meal. The waitress looked up, curious. "What's so funny?" she asked. "My friend loves this place," Von Kalt said. "But he didn't order anything," the waitress answered. Von Kalt smiled. "I know. The joke's on him." The waitress looked confused as Von Kalt exited the cafe, laughing to himself. Chapter 29. Solitaire. Ashley's Journal, Monday evening, July 6th, 2308. This camp is scheduled right down to the last minute. There's not a lot of time for chatting, and the boys don't seem interested in talking to me. I'm the only girl here, and I'm painfully aware of how much I stand out. Today I had my first match. Scott. He was one of the ones who raised his hand as having martial arts experience already. As soon as the whistle blew, he jumped at me. I curled up and his face ran into my knee. I didn't mean to hurt him. There was blood everywhere. They had to take him to a nurse and call in janitors to clean up all the blood. It was totally not my fault. I heard one of the instructors, Lopez, I think, say something about that being an example of number 1. He was trying to be funny, but I think it was mean. Tuesday morning, July 7th, 2308. Dr. Fox woke to discover himself in an opaque plastic cell. They'd left him his clothes, but had taken his shoes. Light filtered in the room from everywhere and nowhere. There was a small enclosure with a toilet and a sink. He was grateful that he hadn't been sent somewhere more primitive. Fox checked his pockets. Empty. The Metacron was gone. It was just as well. Fox realized it had influenced him. It was different from the Micronics, which he had created and programmed. Having survived the explosion at the Epsilon facility, which took the lives of 40,000 criminals, it had a different vibe, to say the least. Based on his own investigation, Fox suspected that it was, in fact, the facility itself. He theorized that the Metacron had consumed every ounce of metallic alloy present and expelled waste material in the explosion. The Metacron was different. He was glad to be rid of it. The room was cold, and having nowhere special to sit, Fox settled on the floor. essentially the same place he'd awaken. He tucked his feet under his legs and tried to minimize the cold. Discovering himself in a meditative posture, not particularly tired and with little else to do, he relaxed his mind and focused on his breath. Ashley's Journal, Tuesday evening, July 7th, 2308. Today we learned lots of boxing moves, punches, jabs. Yesterday was all about blocks and blocking. We even learned how to hold our fingers if we wanted to do an eye poke. They didn't teach us anything like that at the last camp. This is downright dangerous stuff. Si-Hing Shu said that tomorrow we're going to learn kicks, but that we want to learn punches first, because we only want to kick after we knock them down. Someone asked if that was fighting dirty. Shu said he'd rather live dirty than die clean. Everyone laughed. But then he stopped and said, "My point is, you should only be fighting if it's a life or death situation in the first place." I thought that was pretty smart. On my matchup against Chris, he tried to do some fancy kick and sprained his ankle, so he had to forfeit. I won by default. Tuesday evening, July 7th, 2308. Ross switched his vehicle over to autopilot/roam. He triggered his invisibility phase cam and climbed out. He activated the gravity harness as he fell away from the car and headed toward his scheduled rendezvous with Snow and King. Arriving a few minutes later, the three of them hovered high above the Fox home. Snow and King had been waiting. "The hell is going on?" King asked. "Things are getting fishy in the Middle District." Ross pointed out several homes in the neighborhood. "That one's a bureau, over there we have the NSA, those three are private security, and that one is Stanwood's personal team." "No shit," King asked. "Can I tell you, we just got TAD orders from NID? They want us to find Pierce in the device." "So you'll be on the inside?" Ross asked. "I've got orders to go to Jerusalem," Snow interrupted. "What's that about?" "SecDef says Fox asked to have you reassigned," Ross answered. 3 weeks? Thank Croswell. Ross glanced around. "He may not be here, but..." "Big brothers everywhere," King laughed. "And we have another problem," Ross said. "It's been 24 hours since I've seen hide or hair of our good doctor. It seems after his meeting yesterday he bought a cup of coffee and fell off the face of the earth." "Out in D.C.?" Snow asked. Ross nodded. "Gets better. Several customers report nausea, unconsciousness, memory loss, and strange dreams." "Sinusoids," Snow said. "Our weapons have fallen into the hands of our enemies," King said. "Croswell just sent me to Jerusalem and assigned you to our #1 enemy," Snow said. "Please don't go jumping to conclusions," Ross asked. "Where's the footage from the cafe?" Snow asked. "A couple hours ago Reed got footage of the cafe, thank you. I'm sending it to your internal HUDs now." Snow blinked and then closed her eyes for a moment. "That's Stanwood's bitch," she said, identifying Von Kalt. "That's right," King added. "I'd recognize him anywhere." "They just grabbed him off the street?" Snow asked. "Yesterday? And we're doing nothing about it?" "We're not doing nothing," Ross answered. "I've got Reed on it. We'll get a location. But you are going to New Jerusalem." Ross turned to King. "And you are going to work for the enemy." "I won't be able to broadcast. I won't be able to warn you if anything's going down," King said. "It won't come to that." "Oh, by the way, he made the one-shot rule a standing order," Ross said. "That's insane." "What one-shot rule?" Snow asked. "Fox told me that if anyone drew on him, I'd have to give them one free shot before I returned fire. He said, that's the point of return fire." "That's retarded," Snow replied. "Right," King agreed. "I get it," Ross looked at his comrades. "You really don't get it?" "No, I don't get it," King answered. "What's the point of having an invisible bodyguard if you have an order that says let them shoot me?" "I agree with you 100%, Snow added. "I'm not letting them shoot Jeffrey Ashley. Not once. Not ever. It's not happening." Late afternoon sunlight faded from the sky. Ross glanced at his watch. Anna is teaching gymnastics, 2 buildings away from Jeff and only 1 from Ashley. They're surrounded by dozens of people. They're fine. They're surrounded by a bunch of children and teachers. That is far from safe or fine, and you know it, Captain Snow said. "I also know that you are going to El Nuevo Jerusalem as soon as this conversation is finished, aren't you?" Ross asked. Snow waved her hand. "Look," Ross said, "they've got no official rendition warrants for Andrew anywhere in the system. This whole gig is undercover." Snow laughed. So Stanwood finally grew a pair and went off book. She stared at the stars. appearing in the sky overhead. Ross spoke quietly. "Just go and make sure the old man is okay. It's a matter of national security if it makes you feel any better." "You know he just wants me out of the mix," she said. "And what's so wrong with that? You're an original and the only one of us that Stanwood will shoot on sight. You have to find Andrew. If you haven't heard from him in a week, I'm coming back." He said 3. "I don't see how Dr. Tay needs my help in the first place." "Orders are orders, Anna." "Yeah, thanks so much." "I swear the moment we learn anything, you'll be the first person I call. Hell, hanging out with Tay, it'll probably be you guys calling us." Captain Snow smiled. King raised a hand. "Right, I'm off. Must report. O'Dark 30. Catch you cats on the other side." Ross and Snow waved. Snow lingered for a moment. Ross raised his hand. "Objection noted." Snow nodded, turned away, and increased her elevation, heading toward her roaming vehicle lost somewhere in the Angel City traffic. Chapter 30. Flying Dragons. Wednesday, July 8th, 2308. During her third match, Ashley attracted the attention of her instructors. Her assigned adversary, Roger, lanky and uncoordinated, wasn't a threat to anyone but himself. It took little effort for Ashley to stay out of his reach. She let him chase her around the ring, swinging for the fences and never making contact. However, despite ample opportunity, Ashley didn't hit Roger. Seeing Lopez was scoring the match, and at the first break he approached Ashley. "Why don't you strike and end the round? Take the point." Ashley just looked at Roger, gasping and wheezing in the corner. She wasn't even winded. "If you don't strike, the match will end in a tie," Lopez said. Ashley rolled her eyes. Lopez turned and approached Roger, who was gloriously exhausted. "Breathe, breathe," Lopez said. "That's it, breathe." Ashley decided she would go for the tie. She would keep the match as close as possible. She would let Roger get as close as possible, but not give up any points. When the whistle blew, Ashley walked to the center of the ring and raised her gloves. With her toe, she traced a line across the mat, daring Roger to cross it. Roger took the bait, but with trepidation. He raised his gloves and inched toward the line, prepared to swing. Ashley let him come. Roger filed off a wild jab hook. Ashley watched the clumsy explosion of arm, shoulder, and face. At no point was she in any real danger. Roger scrunched up his face when he punched, as if afraid the act of punching would result in his being struck. Ashley could see why he'd become conditioned to think that way, with such an uncoordinated throw. She let it sail past without moving more than a fraction of an inch. Punch after punch, Ashley moved as little as she could to avoid him. Soon she was moving closer to his flailing fists, but he couldn't hit her. Ashley's dangerous ploy began to draw spectators. The waiting or already finished competitors became interested in her match, and the more heads turned, the more heads turned. Roger stepped in with a wild haymaker. Ashley pivoted under the strike, coming up on his unprotected backside. He spun, panicked, uncoiling as if he were a broken metal spring. Ashley slipped out of the way. Roger threw 3 jabs. Ashley dodged him, his gloves inside kissing range. Roger stepped in with a knee and a kick. Ashley eluded him. He lunged at her. She caught him and kept him from falling. He combined jabs, hooks, and elbows. She gave him a pirouette, landing behind him, and then spun twice more just to keep him off balance. The timer rang, and that was the end of the round. Seeing Lopez laughed. Quite a crowd had gathered. During the break, Roger had a dozen coaches. No one said anything to Ashley. Her corner was closer to the wall and outside the action. She waited alone. In the last round, Roger got more technical, but it was too late. He was exhausted. After one extravagant punch, Ashley reached out and put a finger at the back of his elbow. Roger was overextended, his stance was compromised, and in order to escape, he was forced to collapse forward onto the floor. Ashley stepped back and let him wearily climb to his feet. Roger didn't raise his hands. He was beaten and he knew it. He didn't want to fight anymore. He was humiliated. Seeing Lopez waved at him. "Come on, keep going." Roger just looked at him. Lopez looked over to Ashley. Ash had no intention of hitting Roger. After kneeing Scott in the face, quite by accident, she saw no reason to further facilitate Shu's brutal lessons. If he wanted people to experience pain, let him dish it out. Lopez seemed capable of reading her thoughts, but Ashley said nothing. She stood her ground. Lopez blew the whistle, ending the third round. He awarded the win to Ashley, as Roger had forfeited the match. Wednesday, July 8th, 2308. Ross adjusted his gear as the autopilot threaded the midday Angel City traffic. The computer chimed, alerting him that they had reached their destination vector. The Major powered up his phase camouflage, opened the hatch, and stepped into the wild blue yonder. As the gravity harness came online, his freefall was gradually reversed until he was ascending again. Ross activated his thermal lenses and went looking for his friend.
Are you sure you're up for this?
Croswell asked.
We have to do something. And you shipped all our MVPs to BFE, so... Anna's trip has been planned for months. Tay's got some new tech he's jumping out of his shorts to show us, and we need King right where he is. You'll see I'm right about that.
Hey, I agree with you there, Ross said.
If we make a move now, Stammer will say we're trying to take over. He's got the AG and half the congressional branch convinced that Fox is planning a coup.
Are we?
What?
Planning a coup?
No.
Well, why the hell not?
Because killing Stanwood isn't a coup, for one thing.
I think you need to look a little deeper. We both know that nerd is Conway's puppet.
You think this is Conway?
If not him, Big John Phillips. Was Conway there for your little chat the other day?
You know he wasn't.
But Miller and Clark, they were. And you think Miller's going to have something incriminating in his office?
No, but it'll piss him off.
Let's just wax Stan.
If we kill Stanwood now, they will come down on us like a ton of bricks. I can guarantee you our names will come out as active agents on the Centaur project, and then where will we be? Immortal but locked out of society? Hunted? Yeah, fun.
Let's go all the way then, straight to the top. A coup, mutiny, it will be fun.
Were you suggesting installing Fox as the CEO? Let me go on record stating that would be a disaster.
Ross took a deep breath. Can't say I disagree with you there.
And I don't want the job,
Croswell said. Who cares who takes it next? We know who it won't be.
Look, to do this properly, we would need to eliminate all of Fox's enemies. That's at least 50 elected senators and congressmen. And once we kick the first domino, we have to keep going until half the governing body of the country is shifting 6 feet of black soil. Even as insulated as we are, we don't have the juice for that kind of drama. Every agency will go on red alert the moment Stanwood hits the pavement. We can't go at this like a tank through a preschool. I'm all for eliminating Stanwood, but we need to think bigger. We need to set him up, expose his weakness, whatever it is. We need to find out who's feeding him his information.
That's obvious, isn't it? Ross asked.
Not to me,
Croswell answered. You were there the last time Fox stopped by the Oval Office before Epsilon. He hooked Stagwell up with an amplifier. But from what I understand, he's never met with Conway about all this.
Are you trying to say Conway feels left out?
Maybe.
If Stanwood has managed to convince him that he had something to fear, we don't want to go confirming that. We need to discredit him. Squeeze him out and then flush him, if you catch my meaning.
Sorry I asked.
Good. Can we get on with it then?
You really think tossing Senator Miller's office will be enough to shake them up?
Stanwood was his right hand for 9 years. He would never have gotten the intel desk otherwise. Miller's behind everything he does. That much I am sure of.
Glad Snow is in Jerusalem. She'd be examining his tonsils with her compensator if she thought he was behind all this. Invisible, Ross and Croswell approached the window of Senator Miller's unoccupied West Coast office. Let me clone his system before you let everyone know we're here.
Hurry up,
Croswell said, attaching a small explosive to the window. At least let me get what we came here for before you go tearing up the place.
Sheesh. Fine.
Ross operated his Micronics amplifier, scanning the senator's network for open access ports.
Waiting,
Croswell muttered. Wait quietly, Ross smiled.
I believe Secretary of Defense outranks Major,
Croswell said. You're a civilian now. You don't have rank. Besides, I'm Secret Service. We answer to the President.
La-di-da. I could still whip you in a fist fight.
Yeah, for about 30 seconds, old-timer.
You're not too spry yourself. About as fast as a broken-down hound dog with hip dysplasia.
I'm fast. I'm so fast I can hack a senator's desk terminal while putting up with your lame put-downs.
You almost finished? I have a charge here that really wants to pop.
I'm done. Indulge yourself, Ross answered. Smiling, Croswell triggered the plastic explosive, blowing out the senator's window. Inside, he sprayed thousands of tiny transmitters in a wide band across the ceiling, and then he set about to trashing the room. Ross waited, hovering invisibly in the sky, as Secretary of Defense James Croswell literally tossed the office, throwing everything around, half of which made its way out the open window and streamed away from the building with the afternoon breeze. The phase cam warped the light particles around Croswell's armor, rendering him completely invisible. The security guards opened the office doors and did nothing more than watch as Senator Miller's shelves and desk drawers emptied themselves into the afternoon sky. Chapter 31. Serene Violence. Thursday, July 9th, 2308. When it was Ashley's turn to spar, there was already a buzz in the air. Her rebellious performance the day before was on everyone's mind. She couldn't be faulted for non-participation, but her style threatened to unbalance the ranking structure. Ash had no intention of allowing anyone to break her nose, split her lip, or blacken one of her eyes. And since there was no requirement to hit anyone else, she didn't feel she was doing anything wrong. In her desire not to break her own hands on someone else's face, she mastered lesson number 2 without even encountering lesson number 1. Ashley's match was called. They all stared. She was the alien. She wasn't playing by their rules. This time she was up against an experienced boy, Jason. He stretched, bounced, and shadowboxed in his corner. For one so young, his musculature was already sharply defined. Ashley knew that if he hit her, he would make her bleed. He couldn't be allowed to hit her. Seeing Cleary was refereeing the match, and when he blew the whistle, half the heads in the hall turned to watch. Jason unloaded his prepared arsenal of combinations. Jab, jab, hook, low kick, jab, high kick, hook, elbow, knee. Ashley dodged the first few strikes and realized Jason was a robot. He was programmed into formulas of strikes and kicks. Her father would have called him an automaton. It was also how Becca danced, mechanically. Jason was more dangerous than Becca, but just as predictable. Ash stepped back far enough to exaggerate his flawed operation. He continued to chop and punch and kick at the empty air. 2 jabs, a hook, a roundhouse kick, a spinning kick, a front kick. Everyone could see how ridiculous it was, but he didn't stop. Ashley stood across the ring, waiting as he punched toward her. Frustrated and embarrassed, Jason charged. Ash spun past, through him. He couldn't touch her. When he moved, she moved first. She was a matador and his bull was getting tired. Ashley walked to the edge of the circle and lowered her gloves. Jason recognized the arrogant gesture for the taunt it was and growled behind his mouthpiece. He charged again, swinging wildly. Ashley danced along the edge of the circle and he kept coming. She let him charge past her, out of bounds. Cleary blew the whistle and gestured for them to come back to the ring. Jason bounced with energy, stomping back to the center. Ashley walked slowly, taking forever to get into position, infuriating Jason. As Cleary prepared to blow the whistle, Ashley raised her hand and stepped away from the center, turning her back to them. She adjusted her shirt, rolled her shoulders, and stretched her neck. The other matches had ended and the whole room was just watching her. She took her time, not gloating or taunting, but making Jason furious just the same. Ash turned back to Cleary and Jason, who growled. She laughed. He cocked a fist to swing at her, but caught himself and waited for Cleary to blow the whistle. Cleary was content to let Ashley dig her own grave, and he waited for her to get settled. She smiled and nodded. Cleary turned to Jason, who nodded. He blew the whistle and Jason leapt at Ashley, throwing his whole body into the air. There was nowhere for Ashley to go. It was too late. She was caught. She collapsed under her attacker's assault. Jason, however, was not prepared to catch his prey so easily and discovered himself falling with the girl under him. He wasn't going to hurt her as much as both of them, and not deliberately or honorably, but stupidly. Ashley held Jason's upper arms as her butt hit the mat. Her feet came up from nowhere and she caught his weight at the midsection. Ash transferred Jason's momentum as softly as if he were a baby and tossed him across the room. Ash watched him sail, ass over tea kettle, through the hall. With his head down and his feet toward the ceiling, he flew through the air. People slid out of his way. He overshot the mat and crashed in a tangled heap on the hard gymnasium floor. Ashley got up before Jason even came to a complete stop. Yet relatively unhurt, suddenly he was back on his feet and sprinting toward her. No whistle had blown to stop him, as Cleary, fascinated by the action, had failed to blow it. Ash stepped forward as Jason reached her. She pinned his foot to the mat and turned to the side. Jason whiplashed into the ground. The impact was so crisp and sharp that the entire room was rendered silent in its wake. Cleary found and blew the whistle. He gestured for Lopez and Shu to help, and the three of them knelt beside Jason. Ashley stepped away from the action. Everyone was focused on the unconscious student. Ash drifted further away. Cleary saw her and led her back to the ring. He gestured for her to kneel, facing away from where Lopez and Shu worked on reviving the unconscious Jason. It took almost 10 minutes for Jason to open his eyes, and another 10 to get him walking and talking again. Finally, Shu decided he was well enough to return to the ring, where the match was called in Ashley's favor. Ashley's legs were sore and blood-deprived from kneeling. She thought it ironic that both she and Jason limped from the hall, although separately. No one congratulated her. No one talked to her. She told herself, what did it matter? What did she expect? Her distaste for the violent culture combined with her superior skills had shown up the instructors and students alike. Of course they were quiet. It felt just as awkward for her. Chapter 32. Snow in Jerusalem. Thursday, July 9th, 2308. Dr. Tay's shop was on one of the exclusive executive plates, hovering over the old city and casting shadows like lily pads over a pond. Lau had one of the most expensive corners. The pads rotated in a 24-hour loop. Lau's shop witnessed the sunrise every morning and sunset in the west at evening. The expensive section also guaranteed virtually zero walk-in customers, and since Lau only saw clients on an appointment basis, he could keep his retractable walls open during the day. The robots loved this stimulation. The empty courtyard and garden provided everything he needed for them in the way of testing grounds. Today, however, the retractable panels were closed. In keeping with the sweeping curves of the district, Lau had incorporated circles into every aspect of his shop's design. Looking around, Anna realized she was hard-pressed to find a right angle anywhere. Even the couches touched down with rounded legs. Anna knelt before the robotic panther and peered into its lenses. "So this is what they want?" Anna asked, getting right down to business. "You mean these?" Tay replied, gesturing to the collection of robots spread across the shelves of the shop. "They didn't send me all this way to come back empty-handed. These are just toys. The controller, now that's something special." Anna raised an eyebrow. Tay held up a common pair of eyeglasses. "You did it? After all this time, you finally did it?" Anna asked. "Without your husband's work, it never would have been possible." Anna checked out the activity of the bugs on the shelves. "They are all scanning, all independent, all streaming back to the same source. Many cups may be poured from a single pitcher," Tay said. "You're kidding," Anna smiled. "No, I'm not. The foundation was the mapping work we did installing you guys into the Centaurs. I fine-tuned it a bit, but the human mind is the best parallel processor ever invented. You just have to assign the proper inputs. Running an engine or piloting a Trellium drive isn't so different from managing a heart and organs. Circulating electrical data is no different than blood or coolant." "So these are all you need?" Anna asked, gesturing to the glasses. "Do you have your amplifier?" Tay asked. "I can't lose it. I've got it in one of these pockets somewhere." "Well, once you've initialized, it's easy. I created a partition network called Kiowa Field. So, can you run through it for me, just once? You get how the amplifier works." "I get that you get how the amplifier works, but I don't get it all. All I know is that it works." "Don't bullshit me, little girl. You know lots more than you pretend to know." Tay smiled. "The amplifier has one design flaw. Physically, it invites investigation. It is not easily explained. The commands are all neural, so all you have to do is close them, and you're out." Dr. Tay folded the spectacles closed. The machines powered down. "The neural link prevents you shutting them down accidentally. To sync with it, all you have to do is put on the glasses." He handed them to her. "Go on, give it a shot." Anna took the glasses, opened them, and gingerly set them on her face. The lenses were clear, and she waited, but nothing happened. "Oh, the password is Mississippi," Tay explained. "Just think it." "Mississippi," Anna said aloud. The words Kiowa Field appeared before her. She took a step backwards. The expansion suite was overwhelming. Her visual cortex had grown far beyond the data fed to her brain from her eyes. She could see what they saw, like a hall of mirrors, seeing herself from so many angles. She focused on the menu as she would a Micronics menu, and opened it. Insects, mammals, rodents, and birds. Under the insects, 6 ants, 2 dragonflies, 4 spiders, 1 scorpion, 6 wasps, 2 roly-polies, and 1 flea. Mammals, 1 mountain lion, 1 house cat, 1 fox, 0 dog, 0 lion. Rodents, 2 squirrels, 4 mice. Birds, 2 ravens, 1 bluebird, 1 cardinal, 1 parrot, and 1 dove. The dog and the lion? She asked. Unfinished, of course. The big ones are tougher. Tay gestured to the couch. Go on, put your feet up. Anna sat back on the couch, but her feet remained on the floor. Just pick one, Tay suggested. Anna focused on the word mountain lion. The letters lit up. Their minds merged, and Anna took control of the cat. When your projected consciousness meets the model's reception matrix, an image of your conscious self is written into the robot as an operator, Tay explained. To project the controls back to the glasses, to your mind, and then project your commands back to Sabor incorporates too much lag. It is much simpler to project your mind forward into the cat instead. Anna knew that she existed both inside the machine and in her own body. She could feel it. The glasses kept her connected and prevented neural spillage or overlaps. As the cat, she raised her head, stretched her neck, and yawned. Anna had wondered about the number of couches throughout the lab. How many units had Tay sold? It may be a lab, but this was also clearly a showroom. Perhaps this was a viewing platform for sport. The muscles are composed of electrical fibers, Dr. Tay said. Once current is applied, they contract. The heart is a kinetic generator of my own design. Energy greater than that expended is harvested from every movement. It's like a watch that winds itself. Even the lungs, the act of breathing, serve several functions. In addition to the kinetic energy, the cat's senses are about 1,000,000 times sharper than anything nature ever invented. In terms of visual spectrum, you can see and focus at a distance and at levels of magnification that far exceed anything on the cyber market. It's amazing, Anna said. I feel like I'm a cat. I am the cat. Yes, indeed you are, but it's going to take at least a week before you can really pass for a cat. What do you mean? Learning the animal's body the way it would naturally move, it will take some getting used to. A week, you really think so? She asked. Maybe more. The cat stood and took a trembling step forward with one paw. Dr. Tay laughed. Once Fox and I did all that centaur mind mapping, it was really quite easy. If it hadn't been for the tanks, we never could have done it. I say we because even though he was halfway around the world, this is as much Fox's success as mine. All we needed was a couple more years of research and development, but the government rushed forward and killed all those people. And so this cat, this is what Croswell sent me out here for? Nice. This arises, that becomes, Tay said. The bones are terrellium? Anna asked, as the cat hopped up and down. Tay smiled. The alloy frame is where it's at. Pure terrellium is far too expensive. This mix still holds a charge, but she has a few internal gravity plates and internal phase cam. However, running them together causes her to heat up like nobody's business. I don't recommend it. Okay, that's something to be aware of, Snow said. Look at it this way. She's designed to be invisible without running the phase cam. And she can move almost silently when you want to run it indoors or in other close quarters environments. She's light, tight, and compact, powerful enough to handle multiple armed aggressors. There's just no improving on Mother Nature's design. Do you include any defensive upgrades? 1 or 2, tooth and claw sort of thing. You'll get to know them over time. She can also carry several of the smaller short-range models. Ah, the bugs. I just finished the flea. He can jump 3 miles on a windy day. Anna laughed. Does it know me? Will it recognize me as an operator? What do you mean, recognize you? He asked, puzzled. Does it save me in the cache? No, it records operations, but not you. Yet it can't operate without you connected, so... You said I don't have to be focused on it. No, you don't. How do I explain this? Your decision-making ability rides with you, your collection of experiences and opinions from which you form values. The glasses scan your conscious mind and then push that consciousness into the cat. When you disconnect, it shuts down. It can't clone your mind, it just mirrors it. But it's me in there. I'm doing it. Yes, it's you, Dr. Tay said. And what's with all these couches? It's an appointment-only shop, if that's what you're asking. I provide intelligence services, as I always have, not sales. And these guys won't exactly run off and join the competition. I never expected you to stay forever, Anastasia, Dr. Tay smiled. Anna got up from the couch and sat next to Lau, giving him a big hug. It's good to see you, she said. Where do you think he is then? He asked. Fox? Oh, Stanwood took him, I'm sure. Out in the desert somewhere. Seems to be the consensus. But why? Dr. Tay asked. It's the easiest place to hold him away from terrellium deposits. They can scan in all directions at once, sort of thing. But why did they take him at all? Stanwood thinks Fox is a menace to society, and he might be onto something there. Anna smiled. Remember that little chat the two of you had the other day? Tay nodded. Well, a couple of hours later, the Epsilon facility went boom. They think Fox did it. And they sent you here to keep an eye on me? No, I think they did it because they want me the hell out of Dodge. Afraid I'll set the town on fire. Probably some truth and a bit of wisdom to that, too. You're not worried? Tay asked. About Andrew? No. Whoever took him had better be all caught up on their prayers and life insurance, though. About us? Ha! Anna smiled. I'm not worried. The desert, Dr. Tay scratched his head. Yes, that makes sense. Let me get the light coat for Sabor.